The boy grabbed his leg and screamed. Not a cry, not a whimper. A scream that came from somewhere deeper than a 5-year-old's body should hold. His fingers were blue. His feet were bare in the snow. He clung to Caleb McCord's boot with both hands and wouldn't let go. Wouldn't stop screaming. Wouldn't stop shaking.
"Sir, help us! Mama's bleeding! Mama won't wake up!"
Behind him, 4 more children. 3 girls, 1 boy. The youngest had stopped moving. Caleb McCord hadn't spoken to another human being in 7 weeks. Hadn't cared about anything in 6 years. Hadn't felt his heart beat this hard since the night he buried his wife and daughter in the same grave. If that boy's scream doesn't leave your mind, you're in the right place. Subscribe. Follow this story to the very end. Tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. December 1887, Montana Territory. Caleb McCord had $2.40 in his saddlebag, 5 bullets in his Colt, and a burn scar on his right hand that never stopped aching. 37 years old, former Texas Ranger. Current, nothing. Just a shape on a horse moving through snow, heading nowhere in particular, caring about nothing at all. Scout, his old bay gelding, trudged with his head low. The horse was the only living thing that hadn't quit on Caleb, and most mornings, Caleb figured even Scout was reconsidering. 7 weeks since he'd spoken to another person. 7 weeks of silence and whiskey and sleeping in barns that smelled like hay and failure. The last town he'd passed through, a woman at the general store had asked if he needed help. He'd looked through her like she was made of glass and kept walking. That was Caleb McCord now. A ghost in a coat. A man who'd stopped being a man the night he rode home and found his house in ashes. 6 years ago, Annie and little Beth, his wife and his 4-year-old daughter, gone because a gang he'd been tracking burned his homestead for revenge while he was 3 counties away doing his job. He'd dug through the ruins with his bare hands, found them, found what was left of them. The heat of the embers seared his right palm, melted skin to bone. He kept digging. He buried them in the same grave because Beth had always crawled into their bed at night, and he couldn't stand the thought of her being alone in the ground. Turned in his ranger badge the next morning. Hadn't pinned anything to his chest since. Hadn't built anything. Hadn't stayed anywhere. Hadn't let himself feel the weight of another human being close enough to lose. That was the rule. The only rule. Don't stay. Don't care. Don't feel. Then the boy grabbed his leg. Caleb had heard the voice first. Thin, high, desperate, cutting through the wind like a blade through cloth. He'd pulled Scout to a stop. Listened. Every instinct said keep riding. He kicked Scout forward, rounded the curve in the trail. 5 children blocked the road. The oldest girl held a baby on her hip. 13 years old, coat too thin, face white, arms shaking from the weight. The baby wasn't moving. Behind her, a boy of 11 gripped an axe with both hands, feet planted wide, jaw set like he was ready to swing it at anything that came close. A girl of 8 clutched a brown and white dog against her chest. The dog was barking sharp, frantic, desperate. And in front of them all, the smallest boy. 5 years old, barefoot in the snow, shaking so hard his bones rattled. He lunged at Caleb's horse before Caleb could react, grabbed the boot in the stirrup, locked both hands around Caleb's leg, and screamed.
"Sir, help us! Mama's bleeding! Mama won't wake up! Please, sir, please!"
Scout spooked. Caleb grabbed the reins, steadied the animal, tried to pull his leg free. The boy held on, fingers like iron clamps, frozen iron clamps. Kid, let go.
No, you gotta help. You gotta.
I can't help you. I'm just passing through. Let go of my leg. The boy looked up. Brown eyes, too big for his face, filled with something that punched Caleb in the chest so hard he lost his breath.
Mama's on the floor, the boy whispered. There's blood on her head. Lucy tried to fix it, but Mama won't open her eyes. And Rosie stopped crying. And I'm cold, and I'm scared, and you're the only person on this road.
Caleb's jaw locked. He pulled the reins left, turned Scout around, started to ride away. He got 4 steps before the 13-year-old spoke.
Mister?
Her voice was steady, too steady for a child her age, the steadiness of someone who'd learned to swallow panic because there was nobody else to be calm. My name's Lucy Calloway. That's my brother Sam on your leg. Our mama fell this morning, hit her head on the stove. She's been unconscious for 2 hours. Our baby sister Rosie stopped crying 40 minutes ago, and I don't know if she's alive or dead because I can't feel her breathing through my coat. Caleb stopped Scout. I ain't asking for charity, Lucy said. I've been taking care of this family since my papa died 2 winters back. I can handle most things, but I can't carry a baby who might be dying and drag 4 children through a snowstorm and stop my mama's bleeding all at the same time. Her voice cracked on the last word. Just barely. She caught it, shoved it back down, stood straight. Our ranch is a 1/4 mile up that hill. If you won't help, say so and ride on. We'll manage. We always manage. But if you got any decency left in whatever's eating you up inside, you'll get off that horse and carry my sister before it's too late. The 11-year-old boy raised his axe. Lucy, we don't need him. I can handle it. Jack, your hands are shaking so bad you can't hold that axe straight. Shut your mouth. I can handle it. You're 11. You haven't slept in 2 days. You can't handle everything just because Papa told you to watch over us. Papa didn't mean for you to kill yourself trying. Jack's face crumbled. Just for a second. Then he rebuilt it, brick by brick, the way boys do when they're too young for the weight they're carrying, but too proud to set it down. The 8-year-old girl stepped forward. She had the kind of face that smiled even when things were falling apart. Freckles across her nose. The dog squirmed in her arms.
Mister, my name's Clara. This here's Pepper. Are you a good person?
Caleb stared at her. No.
That ain't true. Mama says you can tell by looking at someone's eyes. Your eyes look like they've been crying for a real long time, even if your face forgot how. That means you got a heart in there somewhere. You're just keeping it locked up.
Something twisted inside Caleb's chest. He looked at this girl. At all of them. At Sam still gripping his leg with blue fingers. At Jack holding an axe he could barely lift. At Lucy with a baby who might be dead on her hip. He thought about riding away. He could do it. Had done it 100 times before. Rode past burning barns, past women screaming, past children crying. Not his problem. Not his fight. He turned Scout around again. Got 2 more steps.
Mister?
Sam's voice. Small. Broken.
Mister, please. I'll do anything. I'll give you my papa's knife. It's the only thing I got left of him, but you can have it. Just help my mama. Please.
Caleb stopped. A 5-year-old boy offering his dead father's knife. The only thing he had left. Offering it to a stranger who was riding away. Caleb's hand found the burn scar on his palm, pressed hard. Felt the ridges of melted skin, the map of everything he'd lost. Beth had been 4 when she died, 1 year younger than this boy. She used to grab his leg exactly like this when he came home from rangering. Used to hold on and say, "Papa, don't leave again. Stay with me." He'd always left. Always had a job, a mission, a badge that mattered more than staying. And then she was gone. And staying was all he'd wanted since. "Where's this ranch?" Caleb heard his voice say. Lucy's shoulders dropped. 1 inch. That's all. 1 inch of relief from a girl who'd been holding herself upright through sheer will for 2 hours. "Up the hill. 10 minutes. "The baby. How long since she moved?" "I don't know. 40 minutes? Maybe more?" Caleb dismounted fast, took 3 steps to Lucy. "Give her to me." Lucy hesitated. Her arms tightened around the bundle. Protective. Even now, exhausted, terrified, she couldn't hand over her baby sister to a stranger without fighting the instinct to hold on. "I had a daughter," Caleb said. His voice came out raw, scraped clean. "She'd be about Rosie's age if she'd lived. Give her to me. Now." Lucy searched his face. Whatever she saw there, it was enough. She handed Rosie over. The baby was light, wrong light, cold through the thin nightgown. Caleb pressed his ear to the tiny chest. Heartbeat. Faint, slow, but there. She was breathing. Shallow. Too shallow, but breathing. "She's alive," Caleb said. Lucy made a sound, half gasp, half prayer. Caleb wrapped Rosie inside his coat, pressed her against his chest, against his heartbeat. Skin-to-skin warmth. The only thing that would save a toddler this cold. "Move," he said. "All of you, now. Run if you can." They ran. Jack led Scout. His free hand never let go of the axe. Clara carried Pepper, talking to the dog the whole way. "It's okay, Pepper. The cowboy man is helping. I told you God sends people when you need them." Lucy took Sam's hand. The boy's feet were too frozen to run, so Lucy half carried, half dragged him. Sam didn't complain, didn't make a sound, just moved. They crested the hill. The ranch looked like it was dying. Fence posts snapped and leaning. Barn door hanging crooked. 2 cows standing in the open, ribs showing through dull coats. No smoke from the cabin chimney. The fire had gone out. But the front porch was swept clean. A tin can with dead flowers sat on the railing, frozen solid. Someone had tried. Someone had been fighting hard to keep this place breathing, long after it should have stopped. "Mama's inside," Lucy said. "Kitchen floor." Caleb went through the door fast. The cabin was freezing. Colder inside than out, because the stove had died and the walls held the cold like a coffin. Sarah Calloway lay on the floor beside the wood stove. Red-brown hair loose around her face. A deep gash on her forehead where she'd struck the stove's iron edge. Blood had pooled dark on the wooden floor beneath her head. Her skin was gray-white. Her lips were blue. Her hands were curled at her sides, scarred, calloused. The hands of a woman who'd been doing the work of 3 people for 2 years, with nobody helping and nobody caring. But she was breathing. Shallow, uneven, but breathing. Caleb handed Rosie to Lucy. "Skin to skin. Open your shirt. Put her against your chest. Cover both of you with every blanket in this house. Jack, get your brother and sister on that bed. All of you together. Body heat. Now." Jack didn't move. Stood in the doorway, axe raised, eyes burning. "You ain't giving orders in my house. This is my family. My papa left me in charge. Your papa left you in charge of keeping them alive. Right now, I'm the best chance you got at that. You want to fight me about it? Or you want to save your mama?" Jack's jaw worked. His eyes were wet. He was 11 years old, and he was falling apart, and he knew it, and he hated it, and there was nothing in the world he could do about it except stand there with his dead father's axe and pretend he wasn't scared. "Jack," Lucy's voice from the bed, gentle now.
Papa would want us to let him help.
The axe lowered, inch by inch. Jack set it against the wall, picked up Sam, carried him to the bed, laid down beside his sisters and his brother, and pulled the blankets up and held on. Caleb knelt beside Sarah, checked her pulse, checked the wound, cleaned it with water from the kettle, wrapped it with strips torn from his shirt. The cut was ugly, but not deep. She'd fainted. Exhaustion, hunger, maybe both. Hit her head on the way down. The bleeding had mostly stopped. He needed fire. Without heat, none of them would last the night. He went to the woodpile outside, almost empty. Maybe a day and a half's worth, burning careful. "Jack, where's your main woodpile?" Jack's face appeared from under the blankets. "Behind the barn, but it's near gone. Mama's been rationing since November. We burn less, so it lasts longer." "How much is left?" "Maybe 3 days, if we're real careful." December, dead of winter. 3 days of wood with months of cold ahead. Caleb loaded the stove, got the fire going, waited until the iron started ticking, spreading heat like a slow promise. Then, Sam spoke from the bed. "Is Mama going to die?" The cabin went quiet. Just the sound of the fire growing and 5 children waiting for an answer. "No," Caleb said. "Papa died," Sam said. "Mama said Papa just went to sleep and didn't wake up, but I know that ain't true. I heard Mama crying. I heard her say they killed him, that somebody killed Papa and nobody cares." Caleb turned slow, looked at the boy. "Who killed your papa, Sam?" Lucy cut in fast. "Sam, don't!" "But Lucy, I said don't!" Lucy's voice had changed, harder, scared. The voice of a girl who knew something she'd been told never to repeat. "We don't talk about that. Mama said we don't talk about that to anybody." Clara pulled Pepper closer. "Especially not strangers, even ones with sad eyes." Caleb looked at Lucy, looked at the fear in her face, looked at the way Jack had gone rigid on the bed, the way even Clara had stopped smiling. 5 children, a mother unconscious on the floor, a dead father nobody would explain, and fear, real fear, the kind that came from something worse than winter. He filed it away, didn't push. Not yet. "I'm going to get more wood," Caleb said. "I'll be back." Sam sat up in bed. "You promise?" "What?" "You promise you'll come back. Because Papa went out one morning and promised he'd come back, and he didn't. He never came back." Caleb's throat closed. His hand found the burn scar, pressed until it hurt. "I'll be back, Sam." "You swear?" "I swear." Sam laid back down, put his thumb in his mouth, closed his eyes, trusted a stranger's word because he had no other choice. Caleb walked outside into the snow, stood on the porch. The wind hit his face like a fist. His breath hung white in the air. He should leave, right now, get on Scout and ride into the white nothing and never look back. These weren't his children. This wasn't his fight. This woman on the floor, this ranch falling apart, this dead father nobody would talk about. None of it was his problem. He'd had a family once. He'd failed them. He'd been 3 counties away while they burned alive, and he'd spent 6 years carrying their ashes inside his chest. He didn't get another chance, didn't deserve one, didn't want one. He untied Scout's reins, put his boot in the stirrup. From inside the cabin, Rosie started crying. Weak, thin, broken, but crying. The sound of a baby fighting to live. The sound his daughter would have made if he'd gotten home in time. If he'd been there. If he'd stayed. Caleb stood with 1 foot in the stirrup and 1 foot on the ground. Halfway gone, halfway here. The place he'd lived for 6 years, always between leaving and staying, never choosing either. Rosie cried louder. Lucy was singing to her. A hymn. Her voice cracked on every other note, but she never stopped.
Jack was whispering to Sam. "It's okay, Sammy. I got you. I'm here. Ain't nobody taking us nowhere." Clara was talking to Pepper. "Don't worry, boy. The cowboy man promised he'd come back, and he looked like the kind of man who keeps promises, even the hard ones."
Caleb pulled his boot from the stirrup, walked to the woodpile, loaded his arms, carried wood inside, fed the fire, went back for more, and more, and more, until the stove roared and the cabin walls started giving up their cold, and the children's faces turned from blue to pink. He sat on the floor beside Sarah. Her breathing was stronger now, color returning to her lips. She'd wake soon, and when she did, she'd find a stranger in her house, and she'd fight him like a cornered animal, because that's what women learned to do when the world gave them nothing but reasons to fight. Sam climbed out of bed again, walked to Caleb, climbed into his lap without asking, put his head against Caleb's chest, right over his heart, and closed his eyes. Caleb's body went rigid, every muscle locked, because the weight of this boy, the smell of his hair, the way his small fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, it was Beth. It was exactly Beth. The same weight, the same warmth, the same absolute trust that only a child can give. His hand hovered over Sam's back, shaking, not from cold. Don't let him in. Don't feel this. Don't care. You'll lose him too. You lose everything you care about. That's what you do. That's who you are. Sam shifted closer, mumbled something into Caleb's chest. Caleb leaned down to hear. "Thank you for coming back," Sam whispered. Caleb's hand came down on the boy's back, held him, held on tight. Felt something inside his chest break open like ice cracking on a river in March. Painful, terrifying, unstoppable. He looked at the fire, at Sarah breathing on the floor, at 5 children huddled together on a bed in a cabin that was falling apart, around a family that was falling apart. 3 days of wood, dead of winter. A mother who might not wake up right. A father who died, and nobody would say how. 5 children with no one left to call. And Caleb McCord, who hadn't cared about anything in 6 years, sitting on a cold floor with a stranger's child in his arms, feeling his dead heart start beating again, and wishing to God it would stop. Because he knew what came next. He knew the cost of caring. He knew how this ended. But Sam was breathing against his chest, and Rosie was crying in Lucy's arms, and Jack was sharpening his dead father's knife in the dark, pretending the tears on his face didn't exist. And somewhere outside, the snow kept falling, covering everything, burying the road out, sealing them in. Caleb wasn't going anywhere tonight. He told himself that was the reason. The snow. Just the snow. But his hand stayed on Sam's back, and his heart kept beating, and the fire kept burning. And for the first time in 6 years, Caleb McCord was afraid. Not of dying. He'd made peace with dying a long time ago. Afraid of living. Afraid of what it would cost him to care about these people. Afraid of what it would cost him to leave. Sarah Calloway opened her eyes at 3 a.m., and the first thing she saw was a stranger holding her son. She moved fast, faster than a woman with a head wound should move, grabbed the iron poker from beside the stove, swung her legs off the floor, and had the poker raised before Caleb could speak. "Get your hands off my boy!" Her voice was raw, hoarse, but underneath it ran something sharp enough to cut steel. She was on her feet now, swaying, blood soaking through the bandage on her forehead. One hand braced against the wall, the other holding that poker like she'd kill with it and not lose a minute of sleep. Sam woke up in Caleb's arms.
Mama! Sam, come here, right now. But Mama, he helped us. He carried Rosie. He made the fire.
Samuel Calloway, you come to me this instant. Sam looked at Caleb, looked at his mother, slid off Caleb's lap, and ran to her. Sarah caught him with her free arm, pulled him behind her, never lowered the poker, never took her eyes off Caleb. "Who are you?" she said. "What are you doing in my house?" Caleb stood slow, kept his hands visible. "Name's Caleb McCord. Your children found me on the road. You were unconscious on the floor, cut on your head. Your baby was hypothermic. I brought them back, started the fire, cleaned your wound. I didn't ask for your help. You were bleeding on the floor. Your daughter was dying." Sarah flinched, just barely. Her eyes darted to the bedroom door, where Lucy was sitting up in bed, Rosie against her chest. The baby was pink now, breathing steady, alive. Sarah looked at Rosie, looked at the color in her cheeks. Something flickered across her face, higher, so enormous she couldn't hide it, couldn't control it, couldn't stop her chin from trembling for one raw second. Then she rebuilt the wall, brick by brick, right in front of Caleb's eyes. "You need to leave," she said. "Thank you for what you did. But you need to leave, now. It's 3 a.m. There's a blizzard building outside. I don't care if the sky's falling. I don't know you. I don't let strangers sleep in my house with my children." "Mama," Lucy's voice from the bedroom. "He saved Rosie." "I heard you, Lucy." "Rosie wasn't breathing right. He put her inside his coat, against his skin. That's what saved her." Sarah's hand tightened on the poker. Her jaw worked. She was fighting something. Gratitude and fear wrestling inside her. And fear was winning, because fear had been winning for 2 years. "I appreciate what you did," Sarah said. Each word measured, controlled. "But I've had men offer help before. Every one of them wanted something. The last one wanted my land. The one before that wanted me. So forgive me if I don't trust a drifter who walks into my house while I'm unconscious and holds my son in the dark." Caleb met her eyes. Brown eyes, same as Sam's. Same as all her children. But these eyes had something the children's didn't. A hardness built from 2 years of being alone, being lied to, being threatened, being told she wasn't enough. "I'll sleep in the barn," Caleb said. "You'll sleep on the road. Your barn door's hanging off one hinge. Your woodpile's got 3 days left. Your fences are down and your cattle are starving. You got 5 children, a head wound, and a blizzard coming. You want me gone? I'll be gone at first light. But right now, at 3 a.m, in the middle of December, you need somebody between your family and that cold, even if you hate it. Don't tell me what I need. I'm telling you what I see. You don't see anything. You've been here 4 hours. You don't know the first thing about me, or my family, or what we've survived. I know your boy offered me his dead father's knife to get me to stop. I know your 13-year-old hasn't slept in 2 days. I know your 8-year-old told me I had sad eyes, and she wasn't wrong. And I know your baby almost died tonight because you fell, and there was nobody here to catch you." Sarah's poker lowered, 1 inch. Then she caught herself, raised it again. "The barn," she said through her teeth, "not the house. And you're gone at dawn. At dawn. I mean it, Mr. McCord. First light, you ride out. We were fine before you came. We'll be fine after you leave." Caleb picked up his coat, walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the latch. "Mrs. Calloway." "What?" "Your boy Sam. He said something on the road. Said his mama told him somebody killed his papa. Said nobody cares." Sarah's face went white. Dead white. The poker dropped to her side. "Sam talks too much. Maybe, or maybe he's scared, and he doesn't understand why his mama won't tell anyone what really happened. "Get out of my house, Mr. McCord." Caleb opened the door. The cold hit him like a wall. He stepped through, pulled the door shut behind him, stood on the porch in the dark. Inside, he heard Sarah drop the poker, heard it clang against the floor, heard her knees hit the wood, heard her breathing change, sharp, ragged, the sound of a woman who'd been standing on pure willpower for 4 hours and finally ran out. "Mama?" Lucy's voice, small. "I'm fine, baby. Go back to sleep." "You're crying." "I said I'm fine." "Mama, he was kind. He was real kind to us." "Kind don't mean safe, Lucy. Kind don't mean he won't hurt us. Kind is just a word men use until they get what they want." "Papa was kind?" Sarah didn't answer that. The silence lasted so long, Caleb thought she'd fallen asleep. Then her voice came through the door, barely a whisper, not meant for anyone to hear.
"Your papa was the kindest man who ever lived, and they killed him for it." Caleb walked to the barn, found an empty stall, laid down on frozen hay, pulled his coat tight, stared at the roof through his breath, white clouds rising and vanishing. His hand found the burn scar, traced the ridges. Annie used to trace it too, before she died. She'd take his hand and run her fingers over the calluses and say, "These hands built our home, Caleb McCord. Don't you forget that." But those hands hadn't saved her. Those hands had dug through ashes too late. He closed his eyes, didn't sleep. Dawn broke gray and flat, no sun, just the sky turning from black to iron. The snow had stopped, but the cold had deepened. The kind of cold that killed livestock in their stalls and froze water in the pail before you could carry it to the house. Caleb was saddling Scout when the cabin door opened. Jack stood there, 11 years old, no coat, axe in his hand, jaw set. "You leavin'? Your mama told me to." "Good." Jack watched him tighten the cinch, watched with eyes that were trying hard to be angry, but kept sliding into something else. Something younger and more afraid. "We don't need you," Jack said. "Papa taught me everything. I can chop wood, I can fix fences, I can shoot Papa's rifle. I'm the man of this house." "I can see that." "So you can go." "I'm going." Caleb swung into the saddle, looked down at this boy. Scrawny arms, chapped hands, dark circles under his eyes. Holding an axe he could barely swing, and carrying a weight that would crush most grown men. "Your papa's knife," Caleb said. "Sam offered it to me on the road. Don't let him give it away. A boy needs something of his father's to hold on to." Jack's lip trembled. He bit it hard enough to draw blood. "Don't tell me how to raise my brother." "Wasn't telling. Just saying." Caleb turned Scout toward the road, got to the gate. "Mr. McCord," he stopped. Didn't turn around. "The woodpile," Jack said. His voice was different now, smaller. "I've been trying to chop enough, but the axe is too heavy, and the trees are too far, and I can't leave the little ones alone long enough to haul a full load." "I know. Mama don't sleep anymore. She gets up at 4 and works until midnight, and she still can't keep up. The fence broke last month, and 3 cattle got out, and we never found them. The barn roof leaks, the well's freezing over. And there's a man in town, a judge. He keeps sending people to check on us. They write things down. Lucy says they're making a case to take us away." Caleb's hands tightened on the reins. "Last week," Jack continued, his voice cracking, "a deputy came. Big man, mean face. He told Mama she had until after Christmas to sell the land, or he'd come back with papers from the court. Said a woman alone with 5 children in winter was a danger to them. Said the judge would place us with proper families." Jack's axe lowered to the ground. His shoulders dropped. 11 years old, and the fight was going out of him, right there in the doorway.
draining away like water through a cracked bucket.
I told Mama I could handle it. Told her I'd work harder. Told her we'd be fine.
His voice broke clean in half.
But we ain't fine. And I can't handle it. And Papa's dead, and nobody will tell me why. And Mama cries every night when she thinks we're sleeping, and I don't know what to do anymore.
The boy wasn't crying, was past crying, was in that place beyond tears where children go when they've been strong too long, and the strength just stops. Caleb sat on his horse at the gate of a failing ranch in the Montana winter, $2.40 in his pocket, 5 bullets in his gun, a burn scar on his hand, and 6 years of running at his back. He should ride. This wasn't his family. This wasn't his fight. He'd had a family. He'd lost them. He'd sworn he'd never carry that weight again.
But Jack was standing in the doorway with his dead father's axe and his dead father's responsibilities, and eyes that looked exactly like Caleb's eyes had looked the morning after the fire. The morning he'd realized nobody was coming to help. The morning he'd learned what alone really meant. Caleb dismounted, tied Scout back to the fence.
"What are you doing?" Jack's voice caught. "Where's the axe head loose?"
"What?"
"Your axe. The head's wobbling. I can see it from here. Where's the wedge?"
"I don't... Papa kept tools in the barn."
"Show me."
"But Mama said..."
"Your mama said I leave at dawn. It's past dawn. I'm still here. She can yell at me herself when she's up." Jack stared at him.
"Why? Why would you stay? You don't know us."
Caleb pulled the axe from Jack's hand, tested the weight, felt the loose head shift on the handle. "Because somebody told me once that a man's worth is measured by what he does when nobody's watching and nothing's in it for him." I didn't believe it for a long time. Maybe I still don't. But your wood pile's empty, and your mama's hurt. And I know how to swing an axe. He walked toward the tree line. Jack followed. 2 steps behind, then beside, then matching Caleb's stride, step for step. "I can show you where Papa used to cut," Jack said. "The good woods past the creek. Dry pine. Burns hot and slow." "Lead the way." They walked through snow up to their knees. The cold was brutal, the kind that found every gap in your clothing and settled into your bones like it meant to stay. Jack led Caleb to a stand of dead pines, good wood, seasoned from standing dead through the fall. Caleb swung the axe. The first stroke rang through the frozen air like a bell. The tree shuddered. Chips flew. He swung again, and again. His body remembered the rhythm. 6 years of drifting hadn't taken that. Some things lived in your muscles, deeper than grief could reach. Jack watched. Studied the way Caleb planted his feet, the angle of the swing, the follow-through. "Papa swung like that," Jack said quietly. "Same way. Feet apart, back straight. He said the axe does the work if you let it." "Your papa was right." "He was right about most things." Jack kicked at the snow. "He was right about the land, too. About why that judge wants it. About the timber up on the ridge." Caleb paused mid-swing. "What timber?" "Papa's land sits below the richest old-growth forest in the territory. Briggs Timber Company been trying to buy it for years. Papa always said no. Said those trees were here before us, and they'd be here after us if we let them be." "Briggs Timber. That connected to the judge?" Jack nodded. "Judge Harlan Briggs. Same man. Owns the timber company, sits on the bench, controls the sheriff. Papa used to say Briggs runs this whole valley like his personal kingdom. And your papa died 2 winters back." "Went out to haul timber in a storm." "That's what they said. Said his horse threw him, and he froze before anyone found him." Jack's voice went flat, clinical, the way children sound when they're repeating a story they don't believe. "They found his body 3 days later, when the snow melted some. His horse was home in the barn, not a scratch on it. Caleb set the axe down. A horse throws a man in the storm. The horse don't walk home calm and unhurt. That's what Mama said. Said something didn't add up. She went to the sheriff. Sheriff said it was an accident. She went to the doctor. Doctor said exposure. She went to the judge. Jack laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. She went to the man who wanted our land and asked him to investigate her husband's death. What did Briggs do? Told the whole town Mama was hysterical. Grieving widow, unstable, making wild accusations. People stopped talking to us after that. Store stopped giving us credit. The church ladies stopped coming around. Even Mrs. Olson at the general store, she still sells to us, but she won't look Mama in the eye anymore. The pieces fell together in Caleb's mind. A man dead under suspicious circumstances. A judge who wanted the dead man's land. A widow being isolated, starved out, set up to fail. And 5 children being used as leverage to force a sale. He'd seen it before. Years ago when he wore a badge. Powerful men using law as a weapon. Land grabs dressed up in legal papers. Families destroyed so someone with money could have more. Jack, did your papa keep any records? A journal, letters, anything that might show what he knew about Briggs? Jack went quiet. His eyes darted sideways, then down. His hand went to his pocket, touched something there, pulled back. I can't talk about that. Mama said never talk about Papa's things. Not to anyone. Even someone who's helping? Especially someone who's helping. That's what Mama said. She said the last man who offered help went straight to Briggs and told him everything. Caleb nodded, picked up the axe, didn't push. The boy would talk when he was ready, or he wouldn't. Trust wasn't something you demanded. It was something you earned. Swing by swing, log by log, day by day. They worked for 2 hours. Caleb chopped, Jack hauled. They built a pile twice the size of what had been there before. Caleb showed Jack how to wedge the axe head tight, how to read the grain before swinging, how to let the weight of the steel do the work. Jack learned fast. His arms were thin but willing, and he listened with the desperate attention of a boy who'd been trying to learn from a dead man's memory. Papa used to take me out here every Saturday, Jack said, stacking logs on the sled. Before sunrise, we'd cut wood and he'd tell me stories about the mountains, about the war, about how he met Mama. How'd he meet her? Jack almost smiled. First time Caleb had seen anything close to a smile on that face. She threw a book at his head in the general store in Billings. He was blocking the shelf she wanted, and he wouldn't move. So she threw the book. Hit him right between the eyes. Papa said that's when he knew she was the one. Sounds about right. They got married 3 weeks later. Mama says she regretted it for the first 6 months and loved him for the next 12 years. Jack's voice softened. She don't talk about him much anymore. It hurts too bad. But sometimes, at night, when she thinks we're asleep, she sits at his chair and holds his coat and just breathes. They hauled wood back to the ranch in silence. The sun was up now, weak and pale behind the clouds, but up. Smoke rose from the cabin chimney. Someone had fed the fire. The front door opened. Sarah stood there. She'd changed clothes, washed the blood from her face. The bandage on her forehead was fresh. She'd redone it herself. She stood straight, rigid, one hand on the doorframe, the other behind her back. Her face was a mask, controlled, cold, giving nothing. I told you to leave at dawn. I heard you. It's past dawn. I noticed. Then why are you still here, Mr. McCord? Caleb dropped an armload of wood on the porch. Because your son showed me where the good pine is, and your woodpile needed filling. I didn't ask you to fill it." "No, ma'am, you didn't." Sarah looked at the wood, at the pile growing beside the porch, at her son standing next to this stranger, flushed from work, looking more alive than he'd looked in months. "Jack, go inside." "But Mama!" "Inside, now." Jack went, but he stopped at the door, looked back at Caleb with something in his eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. Something that looked a lot like the first fragile thread of trust. Sarah stepped off the porch, walked to Caleb,
Stood close enough that he could see the pulse jumping in her throat, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands trembled at her sides, even though her voice didn't. "I know what you're doing," she said quietly. "You're being useful, making yourself necessary, showing my children what it feels like to have a man around, so that when you leave, and you will leave, the hole you leave behind is bigger than the one that was there before."
"That's not what I'm doing."
"Then what are you doing? What do you want from us? Because I have nothing left to give, Mr. McCord. No money, no land I'm willing to sell. And if you're after something else, I'll put a bullet in you before you get close enough to try."
Her voice cracked on the last word, just barely. She caught it, the way Lucy caught her tears, the way Jack caught his fear. This family had learned to catch everything before it fell. "I want nothing from you," Caleb said.
"Nobody wants nothing."
"I did."
For 6 years, I wanted nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I got it. And it nearly killed me. Sarah stared at him, searching his face the way Lucy had searched it, looking for the lie, the angle, the trap.
3 days, she said. "You can stay 3 days. You sleep in the barn. You eat what we eat, which is not enough. And if my children start calling you anything other than Mr. McCord, you're gone that hour. They've lost one father. They don't need to lose another."
3 days.
"And Mr. McCord."
Yeah.
"Whatever my son told you about his father, forget it. Don't ask about Will. Don't ask about how he died. Don't ask about Judge Briggs. That road leads nowhere good, and I've walked it enough for both of us."
She turned, walked back inside, shut the door. Caleb stood in the yard holding an armload of firewood, staring at a closed door. His breath came out in white clouds that the wind tore apart. 3 days. That's what Kate Brennan had given Eli in the story he'd never know, in a life parallel to his, but a territory away. 3 days to fix what was broken. 3 days to stand between a family and the thing trying to destroy them. 3 days to decide if staying was worth the risk of losing everything again. From inside the cabin, Clara's voice drifted through the walls, clear and bright and completely unafraid.
"Mama, the cowboy man's still here. I told you he had kind eyes. Pepper likes him too, and Pepper don't like nobody."
Sarah's voice, tired but with the faintest edge of something that might have been warmth buried deep under 2 years of ice. "Clara Marie Calloway, eat your breakfast and stop talking about that man's eyes."
"They're real nice eyes, Mama."
"Clara?"
"Just saying."
Caleb stacked the wood on the porch, went back for more, worked until his hands bled through his gloves and his shoulders burned, and his mind went quiet the way it only did when his body was working hard enough to drown out the ghosts. 3 days. He'd fix the fence, stack the woodpile, rehang the barn door. Then he'd ride out, just like he always did. Except Sam was watching him through the window. Small face pressed against the glass, breath fogging a circle on the cold pane. One hand raised in a wave so small it barely existed. Caleb raised his hand back, and something inside his chest cracked wider. That frozen river, that March ice, breaking apart piece by piece, and underneath it, water moving. Cold and terrifying and alive. He turned back to the wood, swung the axe, Let the rhythm carry him. 3 days. He already knew 3 days wouldn't be enough. By the second morning, Caleb had rehung the barn door, patched the roof where snow was drifting in, and split enough wood to last 2 weeks.
His hands were raw inside his gloves. Blisters on top of calluses, on top of the burn scar that never stopped reminding him what he'd lost. Sarah watched him work. He could feel her eyes from the cabin window every time he swung the axe. She never came out to say thank you, never brought him water, never acknowledged that the fence posts he'd reset were straighter than they'd been in a year. She just watched, and he just worked. And between them stretched a silence neither one of them was ready to break. It was Clara who broke it. She came out after breakfast, Pepper at her heels, carrying a jar of coffee wrapped in a dish towel.
Mama didn't send me. I came on my own. She'll be mad, but I don't care.
Caleb took the jar. Thank you, Clara.
You're welcome. Mama made it too strong because she's angry, but it'll warm your insides.
Clara sat on the porch step, pulled Pepper into her lap.
Mr. McCord, can I ask you something?
You're going to, whether I say yes or not.
That's true. Did you really have a little girl? Caleb's hand tightened around the jar.
Yeah.
What was her name?
Beth.
That's a pretty name. What happened to her?
She died.
How?
Clara, Lucy appeared in the doorway. Leave the man alone. I'm not bothering him. I'm talking to him. There's a difference. Papa said there's always a difference between bothering and caring. Papa said a lot of things. And he was right about all of them, Lucy sighed. She looked at Caleb with her mother's eyes, calculating, measuring, deciding. Mr. McCord, Sam won't eat. He's been sitting under the table since you came inside last night. Won't talk, won't come out, just sits there holding Papa's knife. He talked to you? Shook his head when I asked if he was hungry. That's it. Your mama try? Mama tried for an hour. He won't even look at her. Lucy paused, chewed her lip. He does that sometimes, goes quiet, won't talk to anybody for days. Started after Papa died.
Doc Shaw says it's grief, but Mama says it's more than that. Sam saw something the morning Papa left, something he won't tell us about. Caleb set down the coffee. What do you mean, saw something? Lucy glanced behind her into the cabin, lowered her voice. Sam was up before dawn that morning. Papa was getting ready to go out. Sam told me later that a man came to the house, before Papa left. A big man on a big horse. Sam watched through the window. Said the man and Papa argued. Said the man grabbed Papa's coat and shoved him. Did Sam say who the man was? He won't say. That's the thing. He described him, big, mean face, wore a star on his chest. But when Mama asked him to say the name, Sam shut down. Hasn't talked about it since. A star on his chest. Deputy. Caleb filed it. Let me try with Sam. Lucy hesitated. Mama won't like it. Your mama don't like much about me being here. One more thing won't hurt. He went inside. The cabin was warm now, the stove doing its job, heat pressing against the walls. Sarah stood at the kitchen counter, kneading bread dough. She didn't look up when he entered, didn't acknowledge him, just kept working the dough with hands that were strong and scarred and shaking slightly. Rosie sat on the floor near the stove, playing with a wooden spoon. She looked up at Caleb, smiled, reached her arms up. He walked past her, couldn't pick her up. Not yet. Not with Sarah watching. Not with the weight of Beth pressing against his chest every time a small child reached for him. He knelt beside the kitchen table. Sam was underneath, knees pulled to his chest, Will Calloway's knife clutched in both hands.
His eyes were open, but vacant, staring at nothing. "Hey, Sam." Nothing. "I finished fixing the barn door. Thought you might want to see." Nothing. Caleb lay flat on the floor, scooted himself under the table until he was lying beside the boy, both of them staring up at the underside of the table. He could feel Sarah's eyes on them, could feel her tension, sharp as a wire pulled tight. "When my daughter died," Caleb said, quiet enough that only Sam could hear, "I stopped talking too. For 3 months. Didn't say a word to anybody. People thought I'd gone crazy. Maybe I had." Sam's fingers moved on the knife handle. Barely, but they moved. "I stopped talking because the words hurt too much. Every word I said reminded me she was gone. Like if I stayed quiet, maybe it wasn't real. Maybe she'd come back." Sam turned his head, just slightly. His eyes focused on Caleb's face. "She didn't come back," Caleb said. "And eventually, I had to start talking again. Not because the hurt went away. It never goes away. But because staying quiet was its own kind of dying." Sam's lip trembled. His fingers tightened on the knife. "You don't have to talk today," Caleb said. "Or tomorrow. You talk when you're ready. But I want you to know something, Sam. Whatever you saw that morning, whatever scared you into going quiet, it's not your fault. None of this is your fault." A tear rolled down Sam's cheek. He didn't wipe it, just let it fall. "And the man you saw," Caleb said, even quieter now. "The big man with the star. He can't hurt you. Not while I'm here." Sam's whole body went rigid. His breath caught. His eyes went wide with something that was pure terror, the kind of fear that lived in a child's bones and never came out. "You know who he is, don't you?" Caleb whispered. Sam nodded. One tiny nod. "Was it the deputy? Man named Marsh?" Sam's face crumpled. He dropped the knife, grabbed Caleb's shirt with both hands, buried his face against Caleb's chest, and cried. Not the loud crying of a child throwing a fit, the silent, shaking crying of a boy who'd been holding a secret for 2 years and couldn't hold it anymore. Caleb put his arm around him, held him, felt the boy's tears soak through his shirt.
"He pushed Papa,"
Sam whispered into Caleb's chest, so quiet, so broken.
"The big man pushed Papa and said if Papa didn't sell the land, something bad would happen. Papa said, 'Get off my property,' and the big man laughed. And then Papa left in the storm, and he never came back."
Sarah's bread knife hit the counter. Caleb looked up. She was standing at the edge of the table, staring down at them. Her face was white. Her hands were shaking.
"Sam," she whispered. "Baby, what did you say?"
Sam pressed harder against Caleb.
"I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I was scared. He said if I told anybody, he'd come back. He said he'd take us all away."
Sarah dropped to her knees, crawled under the table, pulled Sam from Caleb's arms into her own, held him so tight the boy gasped.
"It's not your fault," Sarah said, rocking him. "Oh God, baby, it's not your fault. You were 3 years old. You were a baby. He was big, Mama. His face was mean. And he had a star."
"I know, baby. I know who he is."
Sarah looked at Caleb over her son's head. Her eyes were burning. Not with tears, with rage. The kind of rage that had been buried under 2 years of exhaustion and fear and fighting alone. And now it was coming up, breaking through the surface like fire through ice. "Floyd Marsh," she said. "Briggs's deputy. He came to the house that morning. I didn't know. Will never told me. He just kissed me goodbye and walked into the storm, and I never saw him alive again." "Sarah, they killed him." Her voice was a blade. "Marsh threatened him. Sent him out in that storm knowing he might not come back. And then they called it an accident. And then they called me hysterical. And then they tried to take my children. She stood, set Sam down gently, walked to the bedroom,
Came back holding a wooden box.
"You asked Jack about records," she said. "I heard you. I hear everything that happens on this property." She set the box on the table. Will kept a journal. Everything he knew about Briggs, about the timber company, about the land deals, about who was paying who. He gave it to me the week before he died. Told me to hide it. Told me if anything happened to him, this box was my weapon. She opened it. Inside, a leather journal, thick with entries, letters, documents, and something else, a folded piece of paper with an official seal. "A surveyor's report," Sarah said. "Will paid for it himself. It proves Briggs has been logging illegally on federal land upstream, cutting old growth without permits. The runoff from the clear cutting is what's been flooding the valley every spring, killing livestock, destroying wells. Our ranch sits right on the boundary line. If the federal government finds out, Briggs loses everything." Caleb picked up the journal,
Opened it. Will Calloway's handwriting, careful, methodical, the records of a man who knew he was in danger and wanted to leave a trail.
"Why didn't you take this to the authorities?" Sarah laughed. It was the bitterest sound Caleb had ever heard. "Who?" "The sheriff works for Briggs. The judge is Briggs. The territorial office is 200 miles away through mountain passes that are closed from October to April. And every person in this town who might have stood with me is either too scared or too indebted to Briggs to speak." "Every person?" Sarah paused. "Hank Prescott, the blacksmith. He was Will's closest friend. He believes me. But Briggs holds the mortgage on his shop. One word from Briggs, and Hank's out on the street." "Anyone else?" "Doc Shaw. He examined Will's body. He told me privately that the injuries didn't match a horse throw. Said it looked like Will had been struck from behind before the fall." Sarah's voice hardened. "But Shaw won't say it publicly."
"He's got a family. He's scared."
Scared men can be brave if they've got someone standing with them.
"Pretty words, Mr. McCord, but I've been standing alone for 2 years, and nobody's gotten brave yet."
Caleb closed the journal. "How far is Prescott's shop?"
3 miles into town, but you can't go in daylight. Briggs has eyes everywhere. If anyone sees you carrying Will's journal into Hank's shop, Briggs will know before sundown."
"Then I go at night."
"You go at night to a blacksmith shop in a town that hates me, carrying my dead husband's evidence, on the word of a woman everybody thinks is crazy?" Sarah's voice cracked. "That's your plan?"
"You got a better one?"
"I got no plan, Mr. McCord. I haven't had a plan in 2 years. I've been surviving, day to day, fire to fire, meal to meal, hoping that if I just hold on long enough, something will change."
"Something changed. I'm here."
"You're here for 3 days.
Maybe longer." Sarah stared at him.
"Don't say that."
Don't you dare say that unless you mean it, because my children are already looking at you like you matter. Sam talked to you. My 5-year-old, who hasn't spoken to a stranger in 2 years, talked to you. And if you leave after 3 days, if you ride out and disappear like every other man who's ever promised to help, it will break them. It will break him. Her chin trembled. She caught it, held it still.
"And it might break me," she whispered. "And I can't afford to break. Not yet. Not until my children are safe."
Caleb looked at this woman. Scarred hands, tired eyes, shoulders that carried the weight of 5 children, a dead husband, a stolen life, and 2 years of rage she couldn't afford to feel. "I'm going to Prescott's tonight," he said. "I'm taking the journal. And I'm coming back.
You promise?
There it was again, that word, promise. The word Sam used, the word that meant everything to this family, because the last man who'd promised them anything had walked into a storm and never come home. I promise. Sarah held his gaze, searching, weighing. Then she reached into the box and pulled out the journal, held it against her chest for a moment, the way you hold something precious and terrifying at the same time. Will wrote in this every night after the children were asleep, she said. For 2 years. Every deal Briggs made, every acre he stole, every man he paid off. This journal is the only thing standing between my family and Harlan Briggs, and I'm handing it to a man I've known for 2 days. She held it out. Her hands were shaking. Caleb took the journal. Their fingers touched. Sarah didn't pull away. If you betray us, she said quietly, if you take this to Briggs, if you sell us out for whatever price he's offering, I want you to know something. I'll find you. I don't care how far you run or where you hide. I'll find you and I'll kill you myself. And I won't feel bad about it. I believe you. Good. She turned back to her bread, kneaded it with fists instead of palms, punching the dough like it had wronged her. Caleb tucked the journal inside his coat, against his chest, where he could feel it against his heartbeat. They waited until dark. The children ate supper, beans and cornbread. Clara said grace. Sam ate for the first time in 2 days, small bites, but eating. He sat close to Caleb, close enough that his shoulder touched Caleb's arm. Nobody mentioned it. Lucy noticed and said nothing. Jack noticed and looked away. Sarah noticed and her jaw tightened, but she didn't stop it. After supper, Lucy put the younger ones to bed. Rosie fell asleep in Lucy's arms. Sam climbed the loft ladder, stopped at the top, looked down at Caleb. You'll come back? I'll come back, Sam. Swear on something. Caleb's hand found the burn scar. I swear on this, on everything it means. Sam didn't understand the scar. Didn't need to. He understood the weight in Caleb's voice. The way you understand gravity, or cold. Something too big to explain, but impossible to doubt. Okay, Sam whispered. He disappeared into the loft. Caleb rode to town under a frozen moon. The snow had stopped, but the cold was vicious, air so sharp it hurt to breathe. Scout moved careful on the icy trail, picking his way through drifts that reached the horse's chest in places. Prescott's smithy sat at the edge of town. Dark windows, cold forge, but smoke from the house chimney. Caleb tied Scout behind the building, out of sight. Knocked on the back door. The door opened to the barrel of a shotgun. Who's there? A voice like gravel, old but strong. Name's McCord. Sarah Calloway sent me. The shotgun didn't move. Sarah don't send people. Sarah don't trust people. She trusts you. Said you were Will's best friend. Said you were the only person in this town who still believes her. Silence. The shotgun lowered an inch. She really send you? I'm carrying Will's journal. She asked me to bring it. The door opened wide. Hank Prescott stood in the lamplight, 68 years old, arms thick as railroad ties, from 50 years at the forge, white beard, white hair, eyes that had seen enough lies to recognize truth on sight. Get inside before someone sees you. Caleb stepped in. The house was small, warm, smelled of iron and tobacco. Hank set the shotgun against the wall, sank into a chair, rubbed his face. Will's journal, he said. Lord Almighty. I told that stubborn fool to bury it. Told him Briggs would kill for it. Briggs might have killed for it already. Hank looked up sharp. What do you mean? Caleb told him everything. Sam's testimony, the deputy at the house before Will left. The threat. The storm. The death that wasn't an accident. Hank's face aged 10 years in 10 minutes.
They found him. The position of the body. They found him. The position of the body. The wound on the back of his head. I told Sheriff Dawson it didn't add up. Dawson told me to mind my forge and keep my mouth shut.
Will you testify? Hank was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Briggs holds my mortgage, Hank said. One word and I lose this shop. Lose the house. I'm 68, McCord. Where does a 68-year-old blacksmith go when he's got nothing? Where does a 34-year-old widow go when they take her children? Hank flinched. Sarah's alone, Caleb said. Her boy just told her the deputy threatened her husband the morning he died. She's got evidence that could shut Briggs down, but evidence don't mean nothing without people willing to stand behind it. I know that. Then stand. Hank stood up, walked to the window, looked out of the dark street. Will was the best man I ever knew, Hank said. Better than me, braver than me. He stood up to Briggs when nobody else would, and they killed him for it. I've been carrying that guilt for 2 years, carrying it like a stone in my chest. He turned back to Caleb. His eyes were wet. 3 days after Will died, Briggs came to my shop, stood right where you're standing, told me to forget what I'd seen, told me accidents happen in winter, told me if I was smart, I'd keep my head down and my mouth shut. And you did. God forgive me, I did. Hank's voice broke. I looked Sarah in the eye at Will's funeral, and I didn't say a word. Watched her stand there with 5 children and a broken heart, and I kept my mouth shut because I was scared. Are you still scared? Terrified. Good. Brave men are always terrified. Cowards don't feel anything. Hank wiped his eyes, straightened.
What do you need from me? Keep a copy of the journal. If something happens to the original, the evidence survives. And when the time comes, stand up. Say what you know. Say what you saw. When's the time coming? Briggs sent word through his deputy. Sarah sells by Christmas, or they take the children. Christmas is 4 days away. Hank took the journal, held it like it was made of glass. I'll copy every page tonight. And McCord, there's something else. Doc Shaw came to see me 2 days ago. Said he couldn't sleep anymore. Said Will's death was eating him alive. He wrote a letter to the Territorial Marshal's office in Helena. Sent copies of Will's real examination notes, the ones Briggs told him to destroy. Did the Marshal respond? Don't know. Mail's slow in winter. Could be weeks. Hank paused. But Shaw also said something else. Said he found something in Will's body during the examination. A wound on the back of Will's skull that couldn't have come from a horse throw. A wound from a blunt instrument. Something heavy and flat, like a rifle butt. Caleb's blood went cold. He told Briggs this? He told Briggs it was consistent with the fall. That's what Briggs wanted to hear. But Shaw kept his real notes, kept them hidden, and now he sent them to Helena. Caleb sat in Hank Prescott's kitchen, holding a dead man's journal, listening to an old blacksmith confess 2 years of cowardice, and he felt something building inside him. Not rage, not grief, something older, bigger. The same thing he'd felt the night Sam grabbed his leg in the snow. He rode back to the ranch under stars so bright they hurt to look at. The cold was deeper now, the kind that killed. Scout's breath came in clouds. Caleb's fingers were numb inside his gloves. The cabin windows were dark, everyone sleeping. But the porch light was on, a single lantern burning in the window. Sarah had left it for him, a light in the darkness, a signal that said, "Come home." He tied Scout in the barn, fed the horse, checked the stalls,
stood in the dark and pressed his hand against the burn scar, and thought about Annie and Beth and the family he'd buried, and the family sleeping in that cabin, and the distance between the two, which was 6 years and forever, and no distance at all. The barn door creaked. Sarah stood there, shawl over her nightdress, hair loose, breath white in the cold air.
"You came back," she said.
I said I would.
"Lot of people say a lot of things."
I'm not a lot of people. She stepped closer.
"What did Hank say?"
Caleb told her, all of it. Hank's confession, his guilt, his willingness to testify. Doc Shaw's letter to Helena, the wound on Will's skull that proved his death was murder. Sarah listened without moving, without breathing, it seemed. When he finished, she leaned against the barn wall and slid down until she was sitting in the hay. Her hands covered her face. She didn't cry. She'd gone past crying.
She was in the place beyond tears, where the truth is so big and so terrible that your body doesn't know what to do with it, so it just sits still and shakes.
"They murdered him," she said through her fingers. "I knew it. For 2 years I knew it, and nobody believed me. They called me hysterical. They called me crazy. They took away my friends and my credit and my standing in this town. And the whole time I was right."
You were right.
"And my boy."
She dropped her hands. Her face was raw, stripped bare.
"My 5-year-old son watched a man threaten his father the morning his father died. He's been carrying that for 2 years. 2 years of nightmares and silence and hiding under tables, and I didn't know. I'm his mother, and I didn't know."
He was protecting you, same way you were protecting him.
"He's 5, Caleb. He shouldn't have to protect anybody."
She used his first name. Neither of them noticed.
Or maybe they both did, and neither said anything, because saying it would mean acknowledging that something between them had shifted, that the wall she'd built was cracking, that he was no longer Mr. McCord, the drifter, but Caleb, the man sitting in her barn at midnight, telling her the truth she'd been starving for.
"Christmas is 4 days away," Sarah said. "Briggs is coming. Marsh is coming. They'll have papers and lawyers and the full weight of this town behind them.
And you'll have proof they murdered your husband. You'll have Hank. You'll have Doc Shaw's testimony. And you'll have me."
"You,"
Sarah looked at him.
"a drifter with 5 bullets and a burn scar, against the most powerful man in Montana."
I've been worse odds.
"Have you won?"
Not always. But I've never stopped fighting. Sarah was quiet. The barn creaked in the wind. Somewhere in the dark, an owl called.
"I need you to understand something," she said. "If we lose, Briggs takes my children. All 5 of them.
Splits them up, puts them with families he controls. Lucy goes one place, Jack goes another. Clara and Sam and Rosie scattered across the territory like seeds in the wind.
I'll never get them back."
Her voice broke for the first time since he'd known her. Really broke. The sound of a mother facing the one thing worse than death.
"I can lose the ranch. I can lose the land. I can lose everything Will built and everything I've fought for. But I cannot lose my children. Do you understand? I cannot lose them."
Caleb knelt beside her, took her hands, cold, trembling, scarred. "You won't," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." Sarah looked at their hands. His large, burned, rough. Hers small, calloused, shaking. 2 pairs of broken hands holding on to each other in a dark barn in the middle of winter.
"I don't know how to trust you," she whispered. "I want to. God help me, I want to. But the last time I trusted someone, he walked into a storm and died.
I'm not Will.
No, you're not.
She held his hands tighter.
Will was gentle. Will was kind. Will believed the best in people. She paused. You don't believe the best in anybody. You've got ghosts behind your eyes and scars on your hands, and you look at the world like it's already hurt you in every way it can. And that's why I'm starting to trust you, because you're not kind enough to lie to me.
Caleb almost smiled. Almost.
Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow we plan for Christmas. Sarah stood, brushed hay from her nightdress, walked to the barn door.
Caleb?
Yeah?
Thank you for coming back.
She left. The lantern in the cabin window went dark. Caleb lay in the hay, stared at the roof. His hand found the burn scar, traced it, pressed it. But for the first time in 6 years, the gesture wasn't about pain. It was about remembering. Remembering Annie's face. Remembering Beth's laugh. Remembering what it felt like to have something worth fighting for. He had it again. Right here.
In this falling-apart ranch, with its falling-apart family, and its 4 days until everything either got saved or got destroyed. 4 days until Christmas. 4 days until Briggs came for Sarah's children. And Caleb McCord, who'd spent 6 years running from a burning house, was about to walk straight into another fire. This time, he wouldn't be late. They came on Christmas Eve. Caleb heard the horses before dawn. 4, maybe 5 riders moving fast up the frozen road. He was in the barn checking on Scout when the sound hit him. Hoofbeats muffled by snow, but still carrying in the dead cold silence of a winter morning that hadn't found its like yet. He grabbed his Colt, moved to the barn door, peered out. 5 riders, Deputy Floyd Marsh in front on a black horse, Star catching the faint moonlight. Behind him, 4 men Caleb didn't recognize but knew by type. Hired muscle. The kind of men who did ugly work for money and didn't ask questions. Caleb crossed the yard fast, hit the cabin door with his fist twice. "Sarah, get up! They're here!" The door opened in seconds. Sarah stood there already dressed, boots on, hair pulled back, rifle in her hands. She hadn't been sleeping. Caleb could see it in her eyes. She'd been sitting up all night, waiting for exactly this.
How many?
5, Marsh leading.
The children.
Wake them. Get them in the root cellar.
No.
Sarah's voice was iron. My children are not hiding under the floor of their own home on Christmas Eve. Not for Floyd Marsh, not for Harlan Briggs, not for anyone. Sarah, they've got guns.
So do I.
She turned into the cabin.
Lucy, Jack, get your brother and sisters. Get dressed. Everybody in the main room. Now.
Lucy appeared from the loft, already pulling a coat over her nightdress. She'd heard the horses too.
How many, Mama? 5. Is Mr. McCord still here?
I'm here. Caleb stepped inside. Lucy, get the little ones down. Quick and quiet. Lucy moved fast. Jack was already climbing down, knife in his belt, face white but jaw set. Clara came next, Pepper in her arms, eyes wide but not crying. Sam climbed down last, slow, careful, clutching the loft ladder with hands that trembled.
Mama,
Sam whispered.
Is it the big man? The one who hurt Papa?
Sarah knelt in front of her son, took his face in her hands.
Listen to me, Samuel. Whatever happens, you stay behind me. You hear? Behind me. Yes, Mama.
Rosie was crying in Lucy's arms, confused by the dark and the noise and the fear that filled the cabin like smoke. Lucy bounced her, whispered to her, held her close.
Mrs. Calloway!
Marsh's voice split the silence outside. Loud, confident, the voice of a man who'd never been told no by anyone who could back it up. "I know you're awake. We need to talk." Sarah looked at Caleb. In the lamplight, her face was hard as the frozen ground outside, but her eyes were different. Underneath the armor, underneath 2 years of fighting alone, there was fear. Real fear. The fear of a mother who knew what was at stake. "Stay behind me," she said to her children. "Mama, let me go out there." Jack stepped forward. "I'm the man of this house." "You're 11 years old, Jackson Calloway, and you're staying right here." "Papa would have gone out." "Papa did go out, and he didn't come back." Sarah's voice cracked like a rifle shot. Jack went still. The words hung in the air, heavy as stone. Sarah opened the front door, stepped onto the porch, rifle across her chest. Caleb followed, stood beside her. His Colt was holstered, but his hand rested on the grip. 5 riders sat their horses 30 yards out. Marsh dismounted, slow, theatrical, like he wanted everyone watching to see how unafraid he was. "Mornin', Mrs. Calloway. Merry Christmas Eve." "What do you want, Marsh?" "Judge Briggs sent me. He's worried about you and the children."
This cold snap. A woman alone. 5 little ones. Marsh shook his head with practiced sympathy. "He wanted me to check on your welfare." "My welfare's fine." "That's so." Marsh's eyes moved to Caleb. His face changed. The fake sympathy vanished, replaced by something flat and calculating. "Who's this?" "None of your concern." "Everything on this road is my concern, ma'am. That's what the star means." He tapped his badge. "You got a man living on your property. Stranger. No papers, no references, no history anybody knows. That don't look good, Mrs. Calloway. Not for a woman in your position." "My position." "Single mother, 5 children, failing ranch." Marsh counted them off on his fingers. "Judge Briggs has been real patient, real generous. But patience has limits, and his limit is Christmas. You got until tomorrow to accept his offer on the land. After that, he files the custody papers." Sarah didn't move, didn't flinch. "The land's not for sale." "Then your children go to the court." "Over my dead body." Marsh smiled. The smile of a man who'd heard that phrase before and knew how easy dead bodies were to arrange. "Let's not talk about dead bodies, Mrs. Calloway. Let's talk about living children. 5 of them, all needing food, warmth, education, stability. Things you can't provide alone." "I provide just fine." "The court disagrees." Caleb stepped forward. "The court hasn't ruled yet. There's been no hearing, no testimony, no evidence presented. You're threatening a woman with legal action that doesn't exist." Marsh turned to him slow. "And you are?" "Caleb McCord." McCord. Marsh rolled the name around his mouth. "Don't know it. Don't care about it. You're nobody, mister. A drifter passing through. And whatever Mrs. Calloway's paying you for, comfort or otherwise, it won't change what happens tomorrow." Sarah's rifle came up, aimed at Marsh's chest. "You say one more word like that about me in front of my children, and I'll scatter your teeth across this yard." Marsh's men shifted on their horses, hands moving toward holsters. "Easy now." Marsh raised his palms. "No need for guns, ma'am. I'm just delivering a message. Tomorrow's Christmas. Judge Briggs will be at the courthouse at noon. He's prepared a custody order and a final offer on the land. You show up, sign the papers. This all goes away peaceful. You don't show up." He let the silence finish the sentence. "She'll be there." Every head turned. Caleb had spoken, but it wasn't the words that surprised Marsh. It was the tone. Flat, calm, certain.
the tone of a man who'd made a decision and was done negotiating. "She'll be there," Caleb repeated, "and she'll have evidence, testimony, witnesses. She'll have everything she needs to show this territory what Judge Harlan Briggs really is." Marsh's smile died. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not quite fear, but the cousin of fear. The recognition that something had changed, that this wasn't the same broken widow he'd been bullying for 2 years. Evidence of what? "You'll find out tomorrow." Marsh looked at Sarah, looked at Caleb, looked at the rifle and the Colt, and the 5 children standing in the doorway behind their mother. "Tomorrow at noon," Marsh said. He mounted his horse, looked down at them from the saddle. "And McCord, if you're smart, you'll be gone by then. This territory has a way of swallowing strangers who stick their noses where they don't belong." "I'll keep that in mind." The riders turned, rode off into the gray dawn. Snow kicked up behind them and settled slow. Sarah lowered the rifle. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline burning off, leaving behind the hollow feeling that comes after you face down a threat and survived, but know the real fight hasn't started.
"Mama,"
Clara's voice from the doorway, small but steady.
"was that the bad man? The one who hurt Papa?"
Sarah turned to her daughter.
"Yes, baby, that was him. He's got mean eyes. I told you, I can always tell by the eyes." "You were right, Clara. You were right."
Sam hadn't moved from the doorway. He stood behind Jack, one hand gripping his brother's coat, staring at the road where Marsh had disappeared. His whole body was rigid, shaking, not from cold. Caleb knelt in front of him. "Sam, look at me." Sam's eyes found Caleb's, brown and enormous, and filled with a terror that went all the way to the bottom.
"He came back,"
Sam whispered.
"The big man came back."
"And he left. He left because your mama stood on that porch with a rifle and told him to go. He left because he's scared, Sam. Scared of your mama. Scared of the truth. Scared of what happens tomorrow."
"What happens tomorrow?"
"Tomorrow we fight, and we win."
"How do you know we'll win?"
Caleb put his hand on Sam's shoulder, felt the boy trembling beneath his fingers.
"Because your papa left us everything we need. Because people in this town are ready to stand up. And because I'm not leaving."
Sam grabbed Caleb's hand, held on with both of his. "Promise?" "I already promised you once, Sam. I don't break my promises. Not anymore." They spent the day preparing. Caleb rode to Hank Prescott's in daylight this time. Didn't care who saw. The time for hiding was over. Hank had the journal copies ready, every page duplicated in his careful blacksmith script. He'd also done something else. "Talk to people," Hank said. "After you left the other night, I couldn't sleep. So I walked, knocked on doors, told people what I knew, what I'd seen." "Who'd you talk to?" "Henderson family. Their barn flooded last spring from the runoff. Lost 2 horses. Henderson said he'd been wanting to speak up for a year, but didn't have the nerve." Hank paused. "Martha Ferguson. Her well went bad after Briggs clear-cut the ridge above her property. She's been hauling water from the creek for 6 months. And Tom Grady, his boy, worked a season at the timber camp. Came home with a crushed hand. Briggs paid him $10 and told him to keep quiet." "Will they testify?" "Henderson will. Martha will. Grady's thinking on it." Hank straightened. "And Doc Shaw sent word through his wife. He'll be at the courthouse tomorrow. Said he's done being afraid." Caleb looked at this old blacksmith standing in his shop, surrounded by iron and fire and 50 years of work, risking everything he had because a dead man's widow needed him to be brave. Will would be proud of you, Hank. Hank's eyes filled. Will would be ashamed it took me this long. Caleb rode home. Home. He caught the word in his mind, held it, examined it. He'd called it home. The Callaway Ranch, a place he'd known for 3 days. Sarah was in the kitchen when he walked in. She'd been baking. The cabin smelled like bread and something sweeter, something with cinnamon and sugar. Christmas Eve baking. "The children need Christmas," she said before he could speak. "Whatever happens tomorrow, tonight they get Christmas. They get cookies and songs and their mama pretending everything's fine." Everything might be fine. "Don't, Caleb. Don't give me hope I can't afford." "Then take the hope you can afford. Hank's got witnesses. Doc Shaw's coming. Henderson, Martha Ferguson, maybe Grady. You've got the journal, the surveyor's report, and Sam's testimony about Marsh threatening Will." Sarah stopped kneading. "Sam's not testifying. He's 5 years old. I won't put him through that." "You might not have to. Doc Shaw's medical evidence and Hank's eyewitness testimony might be enough. But if it comes down to it, if Briggs pushes and the court needs more—" "No!" Sarah slammed her palm on the counter. Flour billowed. "I will burn this ranch to the ground before I let my 5-year-old stand in a courthouse and relive the worst morning of his life. He's a child, Caleb. He's already broken enough." "I know that." "Do you? Because you've been here 3 days, and you're talking about my children like chess pieces. Move Sam here, position Jack there, use Lucy's testimony, use Clara's charm. These aren't pieces. They're my babies." The words hit hard. Caleb took them. Deserved them. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry." Sarah's anger collapsed as quickly as it came. She pressed her hands against her eyes. "No, I'm sorry. You've done more for us in 3 days than this whole town has done in 2 years. I'm just scared. I'm so scared, Caleb. Tomorrow could go either way, and if it goes wrong, I lose everything." "It won't go wrong." "You can't know that." "No, but I can promise you I'll be standing next to you when it happens. Whatever it is." Sarah lowered her hands, looked at him. Her eyes were red, exhausted, terrified. But underneath all of it, buried deep but still burning, was the same fire he'd seen the night he showed her Will's journal. The fire that had kept her alive for 2 years. The fire that wouldn't go out. "Help me make cookies," she said. They baked. Clara helped, getting flour everywhere, on her face, in her hair, on Pepper. Jack sat by the fire sharpening his knife, pretending he didn't care about cookies, but stealing dough when he thought nobody was looking. Lucy held Rosie and sang carols, her voice sweet and clear and aching with the innocence of a girl who should be worrying about ribbons and boys, not courtrooms in custody. Sam sat under the table again, but this time he wasn't hiding. He was working on something. When he crawled out, he held a piece of paper, folded and creased. "For you, Mr. Caleb." He held it up. Caleb took it, unfolded it. A drawing, stick figures, 5 children, a woman, and a man. The man was tall with a brown hat. He was holding the smallest figure's hand. Above them, in shaky 5-year-old letters, one word: family. Caleb's throat closed, his vision blurred. He folded the paper carefully, put it inside his coat, next to Will's journal, next to his heart. "Thank you, Sam." "That's us," Sam said, pointing at the drawing through Caleb's coat. "All of us. You're in it because you're with us now." Lucy turned away. Her singing stopped for a moment. When it started again, her voice was thicker. Jack stood up from the fire, walked to Sam, put his hand on his brother's head. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Sarah stood at the counter, hands covered in flour, watching her children gather around this man who'd appeared from nowhere 4 days ago. Her lip trembled. She bit it, held on. They ate supper together, the last supper before the fight. Sarah had made stew from the last of the salt beef, thick and hot.
Caleb ate and tasted something he hadn't tasted in 6 years. A meal made with love. A table surrounded by people who wanted him there.
After the children went to bed, Sarah and Caleb sat at the table. The cabin was quiet. Fire cracking low in the stove, wind pressing against the walls. "Tell me about Annie," Sarah said. Caleb looked at her. Nobody had said Annie's name out loud to him in 6 years. "She was better than me in every way that mattered," he said. "Smarter, braver. She could make anyone laugh. She could grow anything in any soil. She used to say I was good at breaking things, and she was good at fixing them. And between the two of us, the world held together." "And Beth?" The name hit him like a physical blow. He took it, let it land. Beth was 4. She had Annie's eyes and my stubbornness. She'd follow me around the ranch all day, wanted to do everything I did. Saddle horses, mend fences, chop wood. She was too small for any of it, but she'd try anyway. His voice roughened. She used to grab my leg when I came home. Hold on so tight, say, "Papa, don't leave again," every time. Every single time. Like Sam. Yeah. Caleb pressed the burn scar. Like Sam. Sarah reached across the table, took his scarred hand in both of hers, ran her fingers over the ridges the way Annie used to. Caleb's breath caught. "I'm not asking you to replace Will," Sarah said quietly. "And I'm not asking you to forget Annie and Beth. But tomorrow, when we walk into that courthouse, I need to know something." "What?" "Are you fighting for us because we remind you of what you lost? Or are you fighting for us because of who we are?" Caleb looked at their hands, his burned, hers scarred. 2 people marked by what they'd lost. "3 days ago," he said, "I was fighting because you reminded me. Because Sam grabbed my leg and I saw Beth. Because your cabin looked like my cabin, and your children looked like the family I buried. And now? Now I'm fighting because Lucy sings hymns when she's scared. Because Jack sharpens a knife he'll never use because it was his father's, and that's all he has left. Because Clara tells a dog everything's going to be okay and means it. Because Rosie reached for me and I wanted to reach back. Because Sam drew a picture of a family and put me in it." He looked at Sarah. "And because you threw a book at a man's head in a general store and married him 3 weeks later. Because you've been fighting alone for 2 years and you haven't quit. Because you make cookies on Christmas Eve when the world's falling apart. Because your children deserve Christmas." Sarah's eyes filled. "I'm not fighting for ghosts anymore," Caleb said. "I'm fighting for you, all of you, because you're worth it." Sarah leaned forward, kissed him, quick, fierce, tasting like cinnamon and tears. Pulled back fast, looking scared and brave at the same time. "Don't die tomorrow," she whispered.
"I'll do my best. That's not good enough. Then I won't die. How's that?" "Better." She almost smiled. Almost. "Good night, Caleb." "Good night, Sarah." She went to the bedroom. Caleb heard her check each child, heard her whisper to Rosie, heard her pull blankets over Sam, heard her stop at Lucy's bed and say, "I love you, baby," and Lucy's sleepy answer, "I love you too, Mama." Caleb sat alone at the table. The fire burned low. Tomorrow was Christmas. Tomorrow
Briggs would come with lawyers and papers and the full power of a corrupt system built to crush women like Sarah and children like hers. And Caleb would be there, with a dead man's journal and a handful of witnesses and 5 bullets and a gun he prayed he wouldn't need. He reached inside his coat, pulled out Sam's drawing, unfolded it, looked at those stick figures standing together, the tall man in the brown hat holding the smallest one's hand, the word written above them in a 5-year-old's careful letters. Family. He folded it back up, put it against his chest, held it there. 6 years ago, he'd lost his family to fire. Tomorrow, he'd fight for a new one. And this time, God willing, this time he wouldn't be too late. He checked his gun, 5 rounds, cleaned each one, loaded them back, holstered the Colt. Then he went to the barn, lay in the hay, and for the first time in 6 years, Caleb McCord slept without dreaming of ashes. Christmas morning. Caleb dressed in the dark, his cleanest shirt, the one he'd torn strips from to bandage Sarah's head 4 days ago. What was left of it still looked decent enough for a courthouse. He strapped on the Colt, checked the 5 rounds, closed his eyes for one breath, opened them. He walked to the cabin. The door was already open. Sarah stood in the kitchen, dressed in a dark blue dress he hadn't seen before. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her jaw was set. She looked like a woman walking into battle, which is exactly what she was.
"Mama's wearing her wedding dress," Clara announced from the table where she was eating porridge.
"She only wears it for important things." "Hush, Clara. It's true. She wore it when Papa died, and she wore it when we buried him, and now she's wearing it to fight the bad man. I think that's brave."
Sarah's hand paused on the coffee pot. She didn't look at Clara, didn't look at anyone. She just stood there for a second, holding the pot, breathing.
"It's the nicest thing I own," she said quietly. "That's all."
Lucy came down from the loft holding Rosie, both of them dressed. Rosie in a white gown that was too small and too thin for December, but clean. Lucy had tied a ribbon in the baby's hair.
"She should look pretty for Christmas," Lucy said, "even if Christmas is a courthouse."
Jack appeared last. He'd put on his father's coat. It was 3 sizes too big, hung past his hands, dragged on the floor. But he wore it like armor. Will Calloway's coat on Will Calloway's son, walking into the fight. Will Calloway didn't live to finish.
"Take that off," Sarah said. "You'll trip."
"No, ma'am."
"Jack."
"Papa would have worn it. I'm wearing it." Sarah opened her mouth, closed it. Her eyes shone. She turned away fast, poured coffee, set it on the table with a hand that shook just enough for Caleb to see. Sam was already at the door, boots on, standing straight. He looked up at Caleb with those brown eyes that had seen too much for 5 years. "I'm ready," Sam said. "Ready for what, buddy?"
"To tell them about the big man, about what he did to Papa."
The kitchen went silent. Sarah set the coffee pot down hard.
"Sam, we talked about this. You're not testifying." "But Mama..." "No, absolutely not. He hurt Papa. I saw it. Nobody else saw it. If I don't tell, nobody knows." "I know, baby, and that's enough."
"It ain't enough." Sam's voice was small but fierce. The fierceness of a boy who'd been silent for 2 years and was done being silent. "Papa always said the truth matters even when it's scary. He said that. I remember." Sarah knelt in front of her son, took his face in both hands. Her chin was trembling.
"Your papa was right. The truth does matter. But you're 5 years old, Samuel, and I won't let you stand in front of the man who killed your father and relive the worst day of your life. I'm not scared anymore, Mama. I am. I'm scared enough for both of us."
Sam put his hands over his mother's. Mr. Caleb said people only threaten when they're scared. He said the big man is scared of us. If the big man's scared of us, maybe I don't have to be scared of him. Sarah looked at Caleb. Her eyes said, "Help me." Her eyes said, "Don't you dare help him." Her eyes said, "I'm losing this argument with a 5-year-old, and I know it." "We go to the courthouse," Caleb said carefully. "We see how it plays. If we don't need Sam, he doesn't speak.
If we do need him, you decide. Nobody else. You." Sarah stared at him for a long time. Then she nodded once, stood, smoothed her wedding dress.
"Let's go,"
she said. They rode into town together, all 7 of them. Sarah on her mare with Rosie bundled against her chest. Lucy and Clara doubled on the old draft horse. Jack rode behind Caleb on Scout, his father's coat bunched up around his waist so it wouldn't tangle in the stirrups. Sam sat in front of Caleb, tucked inside his coat, warm against his chest. Pepper ran alongside, tongue out, tail up, the only member of the family who seemed happy about any of this. The town was quiet, Christmas quiet. Smoke rose from chimneys. A few families were already at church. The courthouse sat at the center of Main Street, 2 stories, stone and timber. The flag hung limp in the cold, but the street wasn't empty. Hank Prescott stood at the courthouse steps, Sunday coat, hat in hand, shotgun leaning against the railing beside him. When he saw Sarah, he straightened, nodded once. The nod of a man who'd finally decided to stop running from his conscience. Beside Hank stood Doc Cornelius Shaw, 62 years old, white coat, medical bag, hands trembling but eyes clear. He'd shaved, combed what was left of his hair. He looked like a man attending his own funeral and making peace with it. And behind them, clustered in a ragged group that looked more like a congregation than a crowd, stood others. Henderson, the rancher, hat in his hands, wife beside him. Martha Ferguson, gray-haired, straight-backed, jaw set like granite. Tom Grady, one hand crushed and scarred, the other holding his hat. And Margaret Olson, who ran the general store, who'd sold Sarah supplies when nobody else would, standing at the edge of the group with her arms folded across her chest and her chin raised. Sarah reined up, stared at them. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Hank stepped forward. "We're here, Sarah. Should have been here 2 years ago. We're here now." Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth. Her shoulders shook once. She caught it, held it, swallowed it down. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank us. Thank that stubborn man behind you who knocked on doors and wouldn't take no for an answer." Hank looked at Caleb. "And thank Will. He started this fight. We're just finishing it." They went inside. The courtroom was packed. Half the town had come. Some to support Sarah, some to watch the spectacle. Most just to see what happened when a widow finally faced the man who'd been crushing her. Judge Harlan Briggs sat behind the bench. Silver hair, black robes, the careful posture of a man who controlled everything in his line of sight. But Caleb watched his eyes, watched them sweep the courtroom, count the faces, land on Hank and Shaw and Henderson, and register something that looked very much like surprise. Deputy Marsh stood by the wall, right hand bandaged from something Caleb didn't ask about. His eyes found Caleb's across the courtroom and held. Pure hatred. The kind of hatred that came from a man who was used to being feared and had just discovered he wasn't. Briggs's lawyer sat near the bench. Young, expensive clothes, stack of papers thick enough to choke a horse. He looked confident. Looked like a man who'd already won and was just here for the formalities. Briggs banged his gavel. "This hearing concerns the welfare of minor children of the Calloway household. Mrs. Calloway, you are present?" Sarah stood. "I am." "And you have no legal representation?" "I represent myself." Murmurs through the courtroom. The lawyer smirked.
Briggs's eyebrows rose with practiced concern. "Very well. Mr. Abernathy, present your case." The lawyer stood, cleared his throat, began reading from his papers in a voice smooth as river ice. "Your Honor, the petitioner presents evidence that Mrs.
Sarah Calloway is unable to provide adequate care for her 5 minor children. The ranch is in severe disrepair. The children have been observed inadequately clothed and malnourished. Furthermore, Mrs. Calloway has been harboring an unknown male vagrant on her property, creating a morally questionable environment." He turned a page. "We request immediate placement of the children with court-appointed guardians, pending full investigation. We further request that Mrs. Calloway be evaluated for mental fitness, given her documented history of erratic accusations against respected members of this community." The courtroom buzzed. Sarah stood rigid, absorbing every word like bullets she'd been dodging for 2 years. "Mrs. Calloway," Briggs said, "how do you respond?" Sarah stepped forward. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table to stop the tremor. "Your Honor, my ranch is struggling because my husband was murdered 2 years ago, and this town turned its back on me when I tried to find out why." The courtroom went dead silent. "My children are thin because the general store cut my credit on your orders. My fences are broken because I'm one woman doing the work of 3, with no help and no sleep. And the man you're calling a vagrant saved my daughter's life 4 nights ago when she was dying of hypothermia on a road where nobody else stopped." She pulled out Will's journal, set it on the bench in front of Briggs. "This is my husband's journal. 2 years of entries documenting illegal logging by Briggs Timber Company on federal land. Documenting contaminated water runoff that destroyed wells and killed livestock downstream. Documenting threats made against him when he refused to sell his land." Briggs didn't touch the journal. His face had gone gray. "Furthermore," Sarah's voice grew stronger, "I have a surveyor's report, paid for by my husband, proving that Briggs Timber has been operating without federal permits on protected land. I have medical testimony that my husband's death was not an accident." She turned to the courtroom. "Dr. Shaw?" Doc Shaw stood. His legs were unsteady, but his voice wasn't. "My name is Dr. Cornelius Shaw. I've practiced medicine in this town for 34 years. I examined William Calloway's body 2 years ago." He paused, looked at Briggs. "I was instructed to record the cause of death as exposure following a riving accident. I did so under duress." The courtroom erupted. Briggs hammered his gavel. "The truth," Shaw continued, raising his voice above the noise, "is that William Calloway sustained a wound to the back of his skull inconsistent with a horse throw. The wound was caused by a blunt instrument, a rifle butt or similar weapon. William Calloway was struck from behind before he ever fell from that horse." Briggs's gavel was useless. People were on their feet, shouting, some angry, some vindicated. 2 years of whispers turning into roars. "Order!" Briggs slammed the gavel until his hand was red. "This is a custody hearing, not a murder trial." "Then let's talk about custody." Sarah's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Let's talk about why you filed this petition 3 days after I refused your last offer on my land. Let's talk about why your deputy came to my home with 5 armed men on Christmas Eve. Let's talk about why every family in this valley who spoke against your timber company suddenly lost their credit, their contracts, their standing in this town." Hank Prescott stood. "I can speak to that, Your Honor." His voice shook, but held. "I saw the runoff from the timber operation. Gray water pouring into the creek. I told Sheriff Dawson. He told me to keep quiet. I've been keeping quiet for 2 years because you hold my mortgage, and you threatened to take everything I have." Henderson stood next.
Our barn flooded last spring from that runoff. Lost 2 horses. My children drink water that smells like mud." Martha Ferguson stood. "My well's been poisoned since the clear-cutting started. I've been hauling water from the creek like an animal." One by one, person after person, standing up, saying out loud what they'd been whispering for 2 years. The courtroom filled with voices, with anger, with 2 years of silence breaking apart. Briggs's face was the color of ash. His gavel sat useless in his hand. His lawyer was flipping through papers, looking for something, anything, that could stop what was happening. "This is a circus," Briggs said. His voice had lost its authority. It came out thin, desperate. "None of this testimony is relevant to the custody matter." "It's all relevant." A new voice from the back of the courtroom. Every head turned. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, trail dusty, federal badge on his coat. Behind him, 2 more men with badges. "U.S. Marshal Robert Aldridge, Territorial Office, Helena." He walked down the aisle with the slow certainty of a man who had all the authority he needed, and knew it. "I received correspondence 9 days ago from Dr. Cornelius Shaw regarding suspicious death and environmental destruction in this jurisdiction. I've been investigating for the past week." Briggs stood up. "Marshal, this is a local matter." "It was local. It became federal when your timber company started logging protected federal land without permits. And it became a murder investigation when Dr. Shaw's medical evidence reached my office." Aldridge stopped in front of the bench. "Judge Briggs, I've reviewed the surveyor's report, the medical records, the financial transactions between your timber company and county officials. I've interviewed workers from your operation. 3 of them have given sworn statements describing illegal logging, bribery, and witness intimidation." The courtroom was so quiet, Caleb could hear Clara whispering to Pepper. "I'm placing Briggs Timber Company under federal seizure," Aldridge said. "All operations ceased immediately. I'm also recommending that the territorial governor remove you from the bench pending criminal investigation." Briggs's hands gripped the edge of the bench. His knuckles went white. He looked around the courtroom at faces that had feared him yesterday, at people who'd been silent because he controlled their wages, their mortgages, their lives. At a town that was finally looking at him and seeing what Sarah Calloway had seen for 2 years. He looked at Sarah last. This woman in her wedding dress, standing straight, 5 children behind her, the journal of a dead husband in her hands, and the truth in her voice. "The custody petition is dismissed," Briggs said. The words came out hollow, empty, the sound of a man watching his empire collapse. Sarah's knees buckled. Caleb caught her, held her up. She grabbed the table with one hand and his arm with the other, and stayed standing through sheer will.
"Mama?"
Emma's voice. Not Emma. Lucy. Lucy's voice.
"Mama, did we win?"
Sarah turned to her children, all 5 of them. Lucy holding Rosie, Jack in his father's coat, crying now, not hiding it, just letting the tears fall. Clara with Pepper in her arms, grinning so wide her face couldn't contain it. And Sam, standing at the front, looking up at his mother with those brown eyes that had carried a secret for 2 years and finally set it down.
"Yeah, babies,"
Sarah whispered.
"We won."
The courtroom broke open, people rushing forward, hands extended, hugs offered. 2 years of silence turning into 2 minutes of grace. Margaret Olson reached Sarah first, pulled her into an embrace so tight Sarah gasped.
"I'm sorry,"
Margaret whispered.
"I should have done more."
"I should have said something." "You sold me flour when nobody else would," Sarah said.
That was enough. That was everything. Hank Prescott was crying. Standing in the middle of the courtroom, 68 years old, arms like iron, weeping like a child. Doc Shaw put a hand on his shoulder. Two old men who'd carried guilt for 2 years, finally letting it go. Marshal Aldridge approached Sarah. "Mrs. Calloway, I'll need the journal and surveyor's report for evidence. You'll receive them back after the investigation concludes. Take whatever you need. Your husband was a brave man. He documented everything. Without his records, we'd have nothing." "He was the bravest man I ever knew," Sarah said. "He just ran out of time." Aldridge looked at Caleb. "And you, McCord, former Texas Ranger?" "Long time ago. Shaw mentioned you in his letter. Said a stranger showed up and put the pieces together. Said you stood between Mrs. Calloway and 5 armed men on Christmas Eve."
"I just fixed some fences." Aldridge almost smiled. "If you ever want to wear a badge again, come to Helena. Territory needs men who fix things. I'm done with badges, but I appreciate it." Briggs left through his chambers. Marsh followed. Both men broken. Aldridge's deputies went after them. There would be warrants, arrests, trials. The machinery of real justice turning slow, but turning. They walked out of the courthouse into Christmas sun. The street was full of people now. Word had spread the way it does in small towns, fast as fire, impossible to contain. People who hadn't been at the hearing came running. People who'd avoided Sarah for 2 years found the courage to look her in the eye. Clara tugged Caleb's hand. "Mr. Caleb, it's Christmas. Do we still get cookies?" "Yeah, Clara. You still get cookies." "Good, because I told Pepper we would, and he's been looking forward to it." They rode home together, all 7 of them, the same way they'd come, but different. Lighter, like something that had been pressing down on all of them for years, had finally lifted just enough to breathe. The ranch looked the same, broken in places, patched in others. The barn Caleb had fixed, the fences he'd reset, the woodpile he'd built. Not perfect, not whole, but standing. Sarah dismounted, stood in the yard, looked at her home like she was seeing it for the first time. "Will built this," she said quietly. "Every board, every nail. He'd work all day and come in at sunset with sawdust in his hair and say, 'One more room for one more baby.' And I'd tell him 5 was plenty, and he'd say, 'One more wouldn't hurt.' And I'd throw something at his head." She laughed, the first real laugh Caleb had heard from her. It sounded like water running free after a long freeze. "He'd be proud of you," Caleb said. "He'd be proud of all of us." They had Christmas, real Christmas. Cookies from last night's baking, coffee with sugar, a luxury Sarah had been saving. Clara sang carols. Jack carved a wooden star with his father's knife and put it on the windowsill. Lucy told Rosie the Christmas story, making up half of it, but getting the important parts right. Sam sat in Caleb's lap at the table, not under it, at it, eating cookies, drinking warm milk, talking. Talking more than he'd talked in 2 years. About the horses, about Pepper, about the snow, about nothing and everything. The way children talk when they finally feel safe enough to make noise. After the children fell asleep, Sarah and Caleb sat on the porch. The night was cold and clear. Stars beyond counting. The kind of sky that made you feel small and enormous at the same time. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "Aldridge investigates. Briggs goes to trial. The timber company gets shut down. The town recovers." "I meant with us." Caleb looked at her. She was looking at the stars, not at him, but he could see her pulse in her throat, could see the way her hands twisted in her lap. Nervous for the first time since he'd met her. "What do you want to happen?" he asked. "I want you to stay, but I'm not going to ask. Because if you stay out of pity or guilt, or because my children remind you of your daughter, it'll poison everything eventually. You have to stay because you want to.
because this is where you belong. Not because of what you lost, but because of what you found." Caleb reached inside his coat, pulled out Sam's drawing, the stick figures, the word above them, family. He unfolded it, set it on the railing between them. "4 days ago, I was a dead man riding a tired horse through the snow. No purpose, no direction, no reason to be alive except I was too stubborn to stop breathing. And now? Now your 8-year-old daughter told me I have kind eyes, and your 11-year-old son showed me where the good pine is, and your 13-year-old daughter sang hymns while she saved her baby sister's life. And your 3-year-old reached for me, and your 5-year-old grabbed my leg in the snow and called me back from the dead." He took her hand. "And you pointed a rifle at me and told me to get out. And then you baked cookies in your wedding dress, and kissed me in a barn, and fought a judge on Christmas with nothing but your husband's journal and the truth." Sarah's eyes were bright. She didn't blink, didn't look away. "I'm not staying because you remind me of Annie," Caleb said. "Annie's gone. Beth's gone. I'll carry them forever, but I can carry them and still be here. I can love what I lost and still love what I found."
Is that what this is?
Sarah's voice was barely a whisper.
Love?
"I don't know what else to call it. 4 days ago, I was a ghost. Now I'm sitting on a porch on Christmas night, with a woman who threw a book at a man's head, and 5 children who saved my life by needing me to save theirs. If that ain't love, I don't know what love is." Sarah leaned into him, put her head on his shoulder. He put his arm around her, held her there, felt her breathing slow, felt the tension she'd been carrying for 2 years finally start to release. "Will would have liked you," she said. "Will would have punched me for kissing his wife." "Probably. Then he would have shook your hand and told you to take care of us." "I intend to." "I know." She lifted her head, looked at him.
Caleb.
"Yeah?"
Merry Christmas.
"Merry Christmas, Sarah." She kissed him, slow this time, not quick and fierce like the barn. Slow and certain, and full of something that neither of them had expected to feel again. The kind of kiss that doesn't promise perfection, just promises showing up, day after day after day. When she went inside, Caleb sat alone on the porch. His hand found the burn scar one last time. He traced the ridges, the map of everything he'd lost. But then he reached into his coat and touched Sam's drawing, the map of everything he'd found. He left the scar alone after that. Spring came slow to Montana that year. The snow held on through February, through March, started melting in April, stubborn as the woman who owned the ranch it covered. But it melted. It always does. By May, the ranch looked different. New fence posts, straight and strong. Barn roof patched solid. Garden planted, first green shoots pushing through dark soil. A second cow in the pen, bought with money from the Territorial Compensation Fund that Marshall Aldridge had established for families damaged by Briggs timber. Hank Prescott came out every Saturday, taught Jack real blacksmithing. The boy's arms were filling out, his hands growing into the work, his face losing that desperate tightness that had lived there since his father died. He still carried Will's knife, but he didn't sharpen it every night anymore. Didn't need to. Doc Shaw checked on the family monthly. Rosie was growing fast, healthy, loud, fearless. She called Caleb K-Cub because she couldn't manage the L, and he answered to it every time. Lucy turned 14 in April. Sarah baked a cake. Clara decorated it with wildflowers. Jack carved a wooden horse for his sister, clumsy but made with love. Lucy held it like it was gold and said, "Thank you, Jack," in a voice that cracked, and Jack looked away fast, but smiled when he thought nobody was watching. Clara had taught Pepper 4 new tricks and was working on a 5th. "He can almost read," she told Caleb with absolute seriousness. "I just need more time." And Sam talked now. Talked constantly. To Lucy, to Jack, to Clara, to Rosie, to Pepper, to the horses, to the chickens Sarah had bought in March, to anyone and anything that would listen. 2 years of silence pouring out in an endless river of words, questions, stories, observations. 5-year-old wisdom delivered with the confidence of someone who'd learned that his voice mattered. One evening in late May, Caleb was fixing a hinge on the cabin door when Sam walked up, stood beside him, watched him work. "Mr. Caleb." "Yes, Sam?" "Can I ask you something?" "You're going to, whether I say yes or not. You're just like Clara that way." Sam grinned. Then his face went serious, the way it did when he was about to say something that mattered. "Lucy calls you Mr. McCord. Jack calls you Caleb. Clara calls you Cowboy Man. Rosie calls you K-Cub." He paused. "Can I call you Papa?" Caleb's hand stopped on the hinge. His throat closed. "I know you're not my real Papa," Sam said quickly.
My real Papa's in heaven, and he's watching us, and I love him forever. But you're here, and you stayed, and you carried me in the snow, and you slept on the floor with me, and you promised you'd come back, and you did. Every time you did." His small hand found Caleb's scarred one, held it. "Mama says family is the people who show up. You showed up, Mr. Caleb. You showed up, and you stayed." Caleb knelt, eye level with this boy who'd grabbed his leg in the snow 5 months ago and pulled him back from the dead. "Sam, I would be honored." Sam threw his arms around Caleb's neck, held on the way he'd held on that first day, with everything he had. "Thank you, Papa," Sam whispered. Over Sam's shoulder, Caleb saw Sarah standing in the doorway. She had one hand pressed to her mouth, tears running down her face. Not sad tears, not grief tears. The kind of tears that come when something you thought was forever broken starts working again. Lucy appeared behind her mother, Jack behind Lucy. Clara pushed through all of them with Pepper in her arms. "What are we looking at? What happened? Did Sam say it? He told me he was going to say it. Did he say it?" "He said it," Lucy confirmed. "Finally!" Clara pumped her fist. "I've been waiting forever. Pepper, he said it!" Pepper barked. Jack didn't say anything, just walked forward, stood beside Caleb and Sam, put his hand on Caleb's shoulder. The weight of it was light. The meaning of it was everything. Sarah walked to them, Rosie on her hip, knelt down, put her arms around Caleb and Sam both. Lucy joined. Clara joined, with Pepper squirming between them. Jack stood with his hand on Caleb's shoulder, not joining the hug because he was 11, and 11-year-old boys don't do that, but not letting go either. 7 people, 1 porch, 1 evening in May, the sky turning gold and pink behind the mountains, snow gone, flowers growing, everything that had been frozen starting to thaw. Caleb held on, eyes closed, feeling the weight of all of them against him. 5 children, 1 woman, 1 old dog. A family he hadn't been looking for, hadn't wanted, hadn't believed he deserved. A family that had found him anyway. That night, after the children were asleep, Caleb sat at the kitchen table. Will Calloway's chair. His chair now. Sarah was beside him, mending one of Jack's shirts, humming a carol Clara had taught her. He pulled the burn scar into the lamplight, looked at it. The ridges, the valleys, the map of everything he'd lost. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the wooden doll he'd been carving for Beth 6 years ago.
the one he'd never finished. He'd carried it every day since the fire. Across territories, through winters, through 7 weeks of silence and 6 years of grief. He set it on the table, picked up Jack's carving knife, and for the first time in 6 years, he started carving again. "What's that?" Sarah asked softly. "Something I started a long time ago, for someone I loved very much." "Are you finishing it?" Caleb carved one slow stroke. The wood curled away, clean and pale and new. "Yeah," he said. "I'm finishing it. For Rosie." Sarah set down the mending, put her hand on his arm. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. The lamp burned steady. The fire cracked low. Outside, the Montana night was wide and dark and full of stars. And Caleb McCord, who'd ridden into a snowstorm with 5 bullets and a dead heart, sat at a kitchen table, carving a wooden doll for a little girl who called him K-Cub, surrounded by a family he'd almost ridden past, in a home he'd almost never found. 6 years ago, he'd lost everything to fire. 5 months ago, a boy grabbed his leg in the snow. And now he was home, whole, found. Not because the grief was gone. It would never be gone. Annie and Beth lived in every stroke of the carving knife, in every ridge of the burn scar, in every breath he took. But grief and love could live in the same chest. Loss and hope could share the same heartbeat. A man could carry his dead and still hold his living. Caleb McCord had been 30 seconds too late once. Too late to save the family he'd built. But he'd been right on time for the family that built him. And he would never be late again.